Welcome back. My name is Dave and this is Fuzzee Tutorials. So today we're going to delve into episode 4 of the do-it-yourself PC build. So today we're going to be installing Windows 10 Professional. Just a little side note on that. Because I've previously installed on this system and I don't want to do it all over from scratch on all the other work I've done, I'm going to be installing this on an actual older style hard drive. It is a new drive, but it's a spinner. So things are going to go a little slower, but I'm going to speed things up in certain places with some speed ramping, but otherwise everything else will be the same. So let's get started. So in today's episode, I'm going to show you how to install Windows 10 64-bit. This is the Pro version. I already went through this process on this computer on the main SSD, and unfortunately the recording that I was making just wasn't usable. Since I've done so much work on the other drive, I don't want to wipe it out and start over. I'm just not really into doing a bunch of cloning and stuff to clone what's there now and then restore it later. So I'm just going to install Windows on the 2 terabyte hard drive that's in the system. So this is going to be quite a bit slower than it would typically be if you're installing on an SSD or an M.2 drive. Now the M.2 drive, for those who might not be aware, it's basically a little tiny, almost like a USB stick type of concept, only it mounts directly onto the motherboard. In this case, we have a 500 gigabyte SSD that is our main boot drive, but we won't be installing on that today. In my particular case, because I was having some issues back when I first built this system with setting up a USB stick for installing Windows from, I'm actually doing this from a DVD drive that is a large enough capacity that I was able to make an install on that. So this is a little slower than it would typically be, but it's still going to show you all the steps you need to know. So here we go. Everything's plugged in. We're going to reboot. Okay, so here we are with the install starting. Now, just so you know ahead of time, I'm going to fast forward through the slow parts. Okay, so here we are at our first screen where we have to do anything. In our case, we're going to be let's see here, looking for English Canada. There we go. But it is a US style keyboard layout. So we're going to go next. And we're going to install now, because this is a fresh install. Now I do have a product key, but you're limited to how many times you can reinstall using a product key. So we're just going to select I don't have a product key. Now if you're doing this from scratch, you could put it in here, or you can just say you don't have one and you can put it in later. It's not a problem. And in this case, we've got Windows 10 Pro, and the Windows 10 Pro N is for networking. So if you're installing it as a workstation, that's the one you would choose. That's assuming you're just setting up in a small business. In a larger corporation, of course, you're going to be going with the full Windows Workstation version. And we're going to accept our license terms and click Next. And we want to choose a custom install. So now these are both on the hard drive, and we're going to actually delete these partitions because those were set up for use as a secondary drive. in Windows. So normally you wouldn't do this step. You would just pick it at this point. We're just going to say drive 0 unallocated space. And I'm going to click on next. Now the reason I didn't format it or create partitions or anything is because the Windows installation is going to do all that for me. So it's not something that you're going to have to worry about. And then we'll pick this up again when it's finishing up. Okay, and we're back. So we're going to pick our region, in my case, Canada. And then, of course, we've got a US style keyboard. So that's correct. And we're not going to add a second keyboard layout. That's something that you might do if you're installing this on a laptop. Now we do have wireless networking here, so go ahead and connect to that. And we'll go next. Now you don't have to connect to the internet to continue your installation. You can do it right from whatever device you're using. So if that's what you're going to do, then you just skip connecting to the internet. And that forces it to install it from your installation media. And then eventually you'll have to connect to the internet once it's all set up to install all of your updates and stuff. But doing it this way, it'll automatically find drivers and updates and install a lot of that stuff automatically. I'm not sure just how new a version of Windows 10 it'll put on. I don't know if it'll actually update you to the new version 20H. I know the version that I've got on my DVD is version 1904. Now, for those of you who have watched my other videos, you know that this is actually a dual monitor system. But because of the device I'm using to capture the on-screen video, I've only got one monitor hooked up at the moment. So once I've got Windows completely installed and can then put on OBS, which will allow me to record both screens, at that point I'll show you how to set up the other monitor. It's actually really simple in Windows 10. And not sure what's going on here, but we're just going to skip. And we're not going to bother with a password right now. Now I recommend that you do put one on, but since this installation will get wiped out when I'm done, then there's not really any point. Now, unless you have a real need to activate this, I would say no. But if you're running, a Microsoft Surface or a Microsoft phone or, other Microsoft devices, then something like this would make sense. But I wouldn't recommend doing it otherwise. If for no other reason, then it adds a little bit of background processing to your installation. Now you can activate all this stuff as you go. I'm not going to bother because it'll just add more time to our installation. And we're not going to use our speech recognition. Now, most people will probably want to leave location-based stuff on, but that's totally up to you. We'll accept it. Now, if you're installing a desktop system, turning this on probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Although it's not going to hurt to install it for sure. If you're using a laptop or other mobile device, then you for sure want to turn that on. But in this case, we're just going to say no. Now, this is something that I actually recommend you do turn on, especially if you're new to computers. That way, if you have any weird issues that crop up and you have some lockups, whenever your system locks up or kicks you out to blue screen, this will automatically send a full set of data, which could be used to help you at a later date if you have to bring in a technician to fix stuff. But in our case, we're not going to turn this on because, or we're just going to leave it on basic, I should say, because this isn't going to be used. Now we're not going to bother turning this on. This is going to slow down our installation. Now this particular item here, if you are brand new to computers, and if you're watching this video, you probably are, or at least to Windows 10, this is something you might want to turn on. But just keep in mind that this is going to be used by their, not just by their technical side of things. This is also going to get you advertisements and stuff that are tailored to what you're doing. So if you don't want them having this kind of information, then you're going to select no, and I'm going to select no for this purposes of this installation. And once again, this is directly related to your advertising stuff, so you may or may not want to have that activated. So I'm going to say no. And we'll pick this back up when it gets to the next spot. All right, and Windows is installed. So as you can see, it's actually pretty easy, although we're not done. There's a few things that we're going to need to do at this point. We're going to need to go in and check a few things, and we're going to want to make sure we've got all the latest drivers installed. We'll check out what this notification is. Oh, not sure what it is they're adding here. So if you see any of these features that you want to add to your system, now is where you can do it. And if you want to see what they're doing or what they've already installed, you can go in and look there. So look at that. Even though we told it not to, it went ahead and installed the speech recognition. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with Windows 10, this is your start bar. And it's got a few things already set up in there for you. This is our File Explorer. So there's our hard drive. And there's the DVD, external DVD drive. Now I can actually unplug that now, but I'll worry about that later. And it comes, of course, pre-installed with Internet Explorer. Oh, I guess that actually no, it updated it to Microsoft Edge. So let's close that down. Now we're going to go in here, and we're going to pick our settings. This is our main start menu. And we're going to go to Updates and Security. So let's see what version of Windows we've got here. So it is the 1909 version. It didn't automatically update us. So we'll just back up a screen here, and we're going to check for updates. And you can see it's downloading them. Now there's quite a bit of stuff here. Now it looks like it's just going to download all the security updates for version 1909, but there's actually been 2 version updates since then. There's version 2004, and then the newest version is the 20H or 20H1 or something like that. So we definitely want to get this updated all the way, but we have to do it step by step. So I'll bring you back when all these updates are installed and we can go to the next major version update. That's got to be done through a little different process, I believe. So you'll notice some of these Even though they downloaded first, it's actually installing our cumulative update first because that's the most important. That's our security updates. And then it'll install the rest of the stuff. Now I will mention that normally this would happen a lot faster if you're installing on an SSD drive rather than an older style hard drive like we are now. All right. So I'm not sure just what the error is here for this one, but we'll go ahead and reboot, and then it might be workable after we reboot. And we're rebooting. Now, just to give you a kind of an indication of the difference here, if we were booting off of the SSD drive, the boot sequence normally takes about 17 or 18 seconds. Mind you, it's still finishing the update, so I guess this time doesn't count. Okay, so we're back into Windows. So now we're going to go back into settings here. We're going to go back to our update and security. And we're going to check for updates again. Now you probably noticed that some of this stuff seemed to have already installed, but these are newer versions. Unfortunately, it doesn't just take you to the newest version. It has to do some stuff in steps. So basically what we have to do is keep doing this process until there's no more updates to be had. And then that's going to get us to the latest update for this version. But there is a couple new versions after this, so we're going to go deal with that now. Okay, so we're up to date for this one. So if we take a look, you'll see we're still on version 1909. Now I would recommend, if you're planning on sticking with the built-in Microsoft browser, I would definitely switch to the new version because it's actually based on Chrome and is quite a bit faster. So we're just going to go ahead and do the switch now. So let's just try rebooting here. Now, one thing to be aware of on this new version of Windows, like version 10 specifically, is that it used to be on older computers to reset all of your memory and data and everything. You would shut your computer off and then power it up. But as of this version anyway, they've changed that. So now when you actually do a full power down, it actually takes us a snapshot of where you're at and saves it to the hard drive and then starts back up from there because it's faster. But if you want to actually reset memory on your system, you do a restart, not a shutdown. So that has changed now. So we'll try going back into settings. And then, of course, update and security. So it's not giving us the option here. We will have to install the update assistant. So we'll download that. Now in our case, I know there are no issues because on the other drive I have installed this update. Now I always like to just save the file and then run it manually. So that didn't take long to run, but the reason I like to do it that way is sometimes there can be issues just running it directly from the internet. So we'll view our downloads. And there we are. We'll just click on that. And you're going to click yes. So we'll click on update now. It confirms that we're compatible. So we'll click next again. And now we wait. That's complete, and we'll restart. All right, at long last, we're back. So we're done with that update, and now we'll just go back and double check our settings here and make sure there's no more updates to be done. I suspect there probably will be. So into update and security, check our OS build info, and there we go, version 20H2. Okay. So we'll do a check for updates. Now I will say that Microsoft does a pretty good job of detecting the hardware that you've got and installing the appropriate drivers. So I personally wouldn't bother going out and downloading specific drivers for all your devices from the manufacturer websites unless you're having issues. So we'll just wait for this cumulative update to install. And I'll bring you back again when that's done. Actually, take a minute and we'll do this. This is going to switch us over to the new Microsoft Edge. Okay, that was pretty painless for that. So if you don't want to use the Microsoft Edge or you're already used to something else, then it's easy enough to install that. But we're not going to cover that in this tutorial. So we got that update done. And we're just going to do one more here. Okay, looks like we're good. So just going to boot it up again because I want to see the difference in speed between boot up on a fully installed setup here between what I know to be on our other what I know to be the speed on our SSD. So I know once the screen blacks out, the other one boots from that point in about 18 seconds. Or even the shutdown process takes so much longer on a older style hard drive. And this is why I really recommend, if you're building a new system where you want to really bump up the apparent performance of an aging system, installing a SSD is really the way to go. There we go. So that took 2 minutes and 9 seconds. So that is a whole lot slower than booting off of an SSD. It's definitely something that you want to install in your system for speed. Makes a huge difference. Now, if you do the full install with all the extra bells and whistles, there's actually a little tool that installs extra that will look at all your drivers and let you go through one by one and update them. The only downside to that software is it wants you to buy the commercial or the pro version of it, which will update all your drivers at the same time with just one click of a button. And it bugs you about it all the time. So it's kind of annoying, but you can do them one at a time. It works good, simple to use, and I would definitely recommend using that. And that'll get you all updated to the latest and greatest. Now, one thing you're probably going to want to do to make sure you've got the latest drivers is for your video card. If you've got a high-end video card, in this case we've got an AMD 5500 XT, so you're going to want to make sure you get the drivers for that. So I'm just going to take you through that real quick. There's some things to know about that. There are some real issues with driver stability with some of the updates they've put out for the higher end AMD graphics cards. You might have to try a few different drivers to get one that's really truly stable. Now, the last really stable one that I'm aware of was the last set of drivers they put out for the month of August 2020. So I think that is driver 20.8.3. And the way their naming convention works is the first two numbers are for the year, so 2020 is 20, and then the followed by the month, and then followed by the number of update that is for that particular month. And then we'll go to the Radeon website. Get rid of that. So go to drivers and support. And of course, we're running the Windows 10 64-bit. And oh, this is a brand new set of drivers. Wow. Well, I think I'll give these ones a shot. And if they're not stable, then I'll go back to the August ones. Well, I don't know my way around this browser very well, but it does show down here our download progress. Now, one thing to keep in mind, because Microsoft is a little more security conscious nowadays, if you have trouble running a package and it tells you you have to run it as administrator, it's easy enough to do. You just right-click on the file and select Run as Administrator. And we'll click on Open File. And we'll click the Yes, of course. And we'll just leave it on the default location. Click Install. Now, while that's happening, if you're a gamer, then of course you're going to want to go and install the DirectX 12 drivers. And you can get those on the Microsoft Store. So all we were installing there was the installer software. Now we've got to actually install the new drivers. So we just click the install button there. And once again, if you're doing this on an SSD, it's going to install much, much faster. And I'll bring you back when this is done. All right, sorry for that little detour there, folks, but those new drivers caused me some big problems. By themselves, they were fine, I guess, but it caused an issue with my capture card and forced me to 800 by 600. So I spent some time messing around and couldn't get anything to work right, so I had to revert back to the older version of the drivers. So that's kind of what I was talking about. AMD has some real stability issues with some of their driver implementations. And let's be honest, they're worried about drivers for their new 6800 series, so, or their new 6000 series cards. So I don't think they're spending a lot of time on these new ones for their older stuff. So if you enjoyed what we were doing here, I'd sure appreciate it if you would hit that like button and subscribe. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss future updates. And if you want to support what we're doing, check out my website at www.fuzzed.ca. I'll provide a link in the description below. As with the other videos in this PC build series, I'll have links to all of the parts along with reviews. I'll provide links in the description below for all the parts used in this build. Now they are affiliate links, so if you do buy from those links, I'll make a buck or two, but it doesn't cost you any more. You still get the same great deal, and it helps support what we do here. Check out full reviews on the parts found in this build if you go to the website I listed, and there's also a link to that in the description below. And there's all kinds of resources there you can check out and some free downloads for you. If you're a video editor and you use DaVinci Resolve, I've got some free resources there as well for that. Make sure you go check that out, and you can also maybe even donate if you want to support us in that fashion. So thanks for hanging out with me today. Hope to see you back here soon. Bye for now.